Hi, everyone. This is Dr. John Johnson with 1 Minute Closer. It's great to see all of you today. And I wanted to give you some thoughts on leadership and organizations. 1 Minute Closer, as you know, is my YouTube channel. And I want to say thank you for everyone that's joining. And if you are out there joining, would you just send me a chat in the chat box so I'll know you're there? It would be great to hear from you. One of the most influential processes I had in terms of learning about leadership and organizations was a class that I took years ago on organizations and leadership. And one of the textbooks for that class was called, today it's called Reframing Organizations. And it's by Bolman and Deal, Bolman, and the second name is Deal. And it's gone through several editions, the last edition about a year or two ago, book. But there's some concepts from that book that I want to unpack for you just a little bit, because I think they have a great impact on organizations. One thing that I want to say is one of the things about leadership in organizations is that it's important for leaders to be great observers of their organizations. It is extremely important for them to learn how to learn about organizations. And this is how studying leadership and organizations help. We learn some of the things that we need to look for, and we begin to learn how to assess organizations through a number of different paradigms. There are a lot of ways to assess organizations, as you may know. Bolman and Deals is one of them. And in reframing organizations, they talk about the process of looking at organizations through different perspectives. Perspectives come when we look through a certain lens at organizations. For example, I have several pairs of glasses. This pair of glasses I have gives me the perspective of seeing further because I'm short-sighted. I also have some sunglasses. I'm fortunate enough not to need reading glasses, but there are those kinds of glasses as well. All of these give a different lens, a different tone to my vision. And this is what Bolman and Deal talk about in their book. They talk, for one thing, about the perspectives on organizations. They call them frames. So one of those frames is the political perspective. The political perspective sees organizations as arenas of power. They talk about how that power is something that is regularly practiced in organizations. And of course, it must be practiced in an ethical way. But scarce resources are a reality in organizations, and there is always a negotiating that goes on for resources that are scarce, and individuals in the organization that want to find and need different resources. So for example, in a day when IT specialists are scarce, different departments in an organization may be in a constant negotiation for the use of certain IT specialists. Of course, funds are another resource. Budget funds are a resource that individuals and organizations negotiate about and try to gain as well. So, and these are also examples of resources. Space, sometimes in buildings, may be a resource. A corner office may be a resource that someone that wants to have. And so the political perspective says that the process of negotiation over scarce resources in an organization is an ongoing process. It's not an exception to the rule. It's something that happens on a regular and ongoing basis. And the political perspective also looks at different kinds of power. And as we know, there are different kinds of power in organizations. There is, of course, expertise power that happens when individuals bring their expertise to bear on a situation. When they use expertise in a certain way in a situation, or when they have expertise that no one else really has, that gives them an expertise power or a rare expertise. I've had a life of helping to hire faculty for universities, as some of you know. And sometimes universities are looking for specialists that they have a hard time finding. That happens especially if they're based in a certain region. Online faculty are much easier to find because online faculty are recruited from a nationwide database. But when it comes down to individuals that need to be found in a certain city, the demographics of cities dictate that only a certain number of people have master's or doctorate degrees in a certain area. So some of the more scarce and hard to find disciplines, it may be that within a university, once they hire someone, different departments are trying to negotiate over that person and their expertise. So the political perspective talks about these different kinds of power, expertise power. There's also the power of personal charisma. There are individuals that lead because everyone likes them. And it may be that they have personal characteristics that people find endearing, or it may be that they have personal characteristics that people find disarming. There are some individuals that everyone feels they can relate to. They come into a room and it's as if everyone feels like they have been their best friend when they walk around. My father was a bit that way. One of the leadership characteristics I had was that of disarming people and making them feel comfortable by him. A gift that he used well. He used that very well, combined with a great sense of humor, and he became the leader that people wanted to walk into the room. And the leader that people wanted to listen to and be around, because he made them feel good about themselves. He made them feel positive about who they were, and made them feel like they could approach him with issues and questions, and they did approach him. And so that is another kind of power, the power of personal charisma. And of course, there are a number of different kinds of power that individuals use in organizations. There's the power of reference, the individual that knows many other people who are important. LinkedIn, as we know, is used by many people in that way, but it also happens within organizations that there's one person in the organization that just happens to know everyone, and they just happen to know the right people. They may not have a high position of power, but they may know many people that do. And so because of that, they can gain influence in that way, because they have had a personal connection with many individuals who are powerful. And then, of course, there's positional power. And the positional power is the power of the name on the door, the position or the role that a person holds in an organization. But what's surprising to many people is that positional power often is not the most effective kind of power or the most influential kind of power. And in fact, the extent to which positional power is used and is taken advantage of depends to some extent on the skills of the leader. There are leaders with high positional authority who really do not have a great deal of power. I remember back when I was studying universities, I studied several different universities where the president of the university actually didn't have much power. The vice presidents were really more in charge of things. And sometimes that happens to the top leader. It becomes more of a symbolic role. And in fact, the level of influence they have is not so great. Those are some of the different kinds of power and that Bowman and Deal talk about. And then, of course, there's the power of scarce knowledge, and that is related to expertise power. But the power of scarce knowledge can happen to people who have very low positions in an organization. There's an apocryphal story that's told about a janitor who worked in a factory, and the factory had 100 doors. The janitor had all of the keys and knew which key went to which door. And this was back, of course, before electronic keyless doors. He worked at the factory for a very long time, over 20 years. After 20 years, new management came to the factory, and new management had new ways of doing things. They decided that the janitor's ways of doing things didn't really fit the new culture, and that perhaps the janitor should be replaced. So they fired the janitor and told him to clean out his office immediately. The janitor went home that evening. The new management felt good about themselves. They felt like they had been true to their values and practiced their culture, and that they did a good job in getting rid of the old janitor. The next morning, they came into work. They got the office door open, but yes, you're getting the point now. They didn't know which keys fit to which other doors. And the work of the factory literally came to a halt for 3 days while they struggled with that problem. They tried to fit different keys to different doors. They were not able to get that done. And eventually, after 3 days of struggling with the 100 doors and the huge key ring, they called the janitor back and they offered to hire him back as a consultant, and this time at 3 times his wages. And I'm happy to say that he accepted. But that's a good example of informational power. Well, I didn't plan to be with you very long today, so this concludes the live session. It's been great to talk with all of you. I thank you for those of you that are joining. And if you enjoyed this, write me an email or give me some thoughts on your feedback on whether or not this is a useful tool for our class. Take care now. It's great to be with you all, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day and a great week.